We've now decided to record this, and you'll have this episode to watch right after. We're really thrilled that Ahmer Naqvi could make time for us. For those of you who already watched our long interview, that was more to contextualize cricket. Obviously, for many of our listeners, don't follow the game, so just to learn about its history and just going by some of the reactions to that interview, we can see that people really enjoyed it. So we're keen to have Amber back, and just wanted to briefly introduce Amber. Amber is a writer, broadcaster, and also creator of the excellent podcast But Fast. So yeah, just thanks for coming on to the show again, Amber. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Because we're really keen to do this. Because, like I said, we were speaking about the history of the game previously, but over the past month, plenty has happened in the world of cricket. And we had the World Cup final yesterday. Today is the 9th of March, which marks a year to the day when India played for New Zealand in the Champions Trophy, which is the 50-over competition. That final was obviously played in Dubai for the reasons that were outlined in the long interview with Emmer. Um, I've been thinking about, what has over the past 12 months taught us, and many of those issues were obviously quite visible and front and center during this World Cup. Uh, how are you seeing, how cricket has, do you see this as kind of a mask off thing? Because, like we've read reports about Indian politics' influence on cricket and how India pretty much controls the ICC. Do you think now all of these things in the past 12 months have just come out in the open?
Yeah, I think that there has been the most kind of progress made on this question as far back as I can remember. Um, the nature of that progress and the quantum of that progress is modest, very modest. And I think it amounts to the fact that, for one, we were forced to have some kind of conversation about this issue. And without getting too much into the details of this, I think as long as it was Pakistan and India, it was very easy for a lot of people to throw up their hands and be like, this is too complicated for us to get into. And a lot of, for Indians to, not just Indians, then I don't want to be unfair, like a lot of people commenting on this from the South Asia who could then also point to the fact that, oh, X happened and Y happened, and this is why the Indian government did this. And for most outsiders, for more insiders even, there wasn't enough kind of, way of like countering that. So, firstly, with Bangladesh happening, I think a lot of voices in India, a lot of critical voices in India were finally able to kind of, point to something concrete. Similarly, a lot of voices in Pakistan, both kind of critical as well as those that are like state affiliated, whatever, whatever, were also able to kind of point to something. So that was progress from for on behalf of the people who've been having this conversation for whatever reason, like people like ourselves who are trying to be critical politically, people like who are opposed to the Indian state and represent the Pakistani state interests, and so are coming at it from a different angle. I think the other thing it exposed was how bankrupt the international media, and particularly from Western countries, media covering cricket really was. Because when you talk about the absolute cream of the intelligentsia that covers cricket, the kind of reactions they were giving was, it was laughable. And it was kind of concerning that, there's like, particularly voices coming from Australia, for example, there was a clear conflation of this, post George W. Bush neoliberal agenda of like, brown Muslims. Ah, what are we gonna do? Fucking crazy. So there was, when you look at what Gideon Haig and Peter Ladler and Jeff Lemon had to say, it was that conversation was very much the kind of conversation that Pete Hegseth would have about Iran. That, oh, this crazy country, and they're always up to no good, and we shouldn't even give them any attention. They're a it's borrowing that language very, very similarly. But then you also had like people who were pointing to who making these kinds of arguments that you could tell were either in bad faith, or that these kind of supposed critical or intelligent or thoughtful voices have been sipping from the Kool-Aid for so long that they've really forgotten that there's any other kind of drink in town. And so again, I was really disappointed to see journalists that I would expect better from pointing to the 2008 Mumbai attacks as like the one word answer for these kinds of questions, which, you know, at the very least, that happened almost 20 years ago. There's a lot of things that happened since then. But it was again a reminder that for a lot of people, that conversation has been very, comfortably paused 20 years ago. And so no real introspection is required. And I feel from from people who are invested in the sport being run this way. Again, you saw that maybe they were having to really double down and explain, like, oh, this is why we're so great, or this is why the system is amazing, blah blah blah. Um, so as I said, it's really humble, modest progress, and it wasn't helped by the fact that the narrative, the script for the final was, the ideal script. I would also like to point out that I'm extremely irritated by New Zealand, and when history is written down, we should really put down this cricket team as the enabler of fascism. This is some kind of cricket's version of like European leaders in the late 30s. Like they have a lot to answer for. New Zealand is only good for like defeating the poor teams and then completely becoming like a wishy big three. Like that's what all they're good for.
There was something like peculiar about, like, I feel like the semi-final was the actual match, and then like New Zealand, like the final was just absolutely terrible as a match. Like it was over from the moment it started. I think that is speaking a lot to what you're saying. I think like one of the things I got out of the episode that you all recorded was that there was like this very real possibility, and you've gestured to this, the very real possibility that Pakistan would boycott the India match, and that didn't really happen. So I'm interested to get your take on why you think that didn't happen, and what are some of the implications of that.
Um, well, I think preface my answer by saying that I haven't looked at this issue as a journalist, and I'm sure there are people who know specific details that I am not privy to. Um, Such as there was apparently lobbying from the Sri Lankan cricket board because they stood to lose a lot of money if the game didn't go ahead. I think Priyansh and I discussed in our previous episode about the broadcasters and all of those actions that played. Um, I think we also have to keep in mind that the Pakistan Cricket Board is being run by its interior minister. And as I argued back then as well, the his when he wore his hat as the PCB chairman, he accomplished a lot for his interior minister. Because again, just that the threat of the boycott, as much as it can be justified from a cricketing perspective, was clearly again like there was points for the state to be made. And again, like the PCB or Pakistan cricket or any kind of cricket team being a proxy for political aims is not new. But once again, when there's such amazing efficiency, the same guy is running both things. You don't have to look too deeply into that. And the interior minister, as PCB chairman, has been very much looking to win the headlines, not so much the cricket matches. And I'll give you a really good example of this. So, the hockey is quote unquote Pakistan's national sport, and there's another podcast to happen on like the fate of South Asian hockey and how India and Pakistan were the dominant teams at one point and then like fell apart and India's kind of revived and Pakistan hasn't. But anyways, the Pakistan team was supposed to be in Australia for some tournament and the Hockey Federation, like a lot of other institutions, very corrupt. They didn't even book them like Ubers and hotels. So there's pictures of like the national hockey team just kind of standing at a random bus stop. And so the interior minister slash PCB chairman announces that we're going to give you, I think, 7 crores per to X amount of money. And you guys get your hotels, whatever. We'll take care of you. So everyone's like, "Oh, love you, great job, etc." And then a few days later, the same guy fines the Pakistan cricket team for a poor performance in the World Cup. That fine conveniently happens to be the exact same amount that was promised to the hockey team. Um, and I'm mentioning this incident because it's really difficult to understand it within the realms of like sport administration, but it's quite easy to understand it when you're looking at it as an influential member of the ruling regime in Pakistan and its own dispensation. So, in light of that, but to answer your question again, like what the boycott happening, not happening, um, it ended up being about cricket because obviously cricket was at the center of it, but those decisions in Pakistan were being taken at a state level, and then whatever was used to convince them were also happening beyond the kind of realms of cricket alone. And I think that was another, like, as I just mentioned in my previous answer, that this was a space for like critical voices in cricket to finally be heard. At the same time, it was also great space for like the ruling regime in Pakistan to make, certain gains.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's this whole news cycle around the fine has played out so curiously, right? With the first, the fine has been announced. Basically, it has actually not been officially announced. Like this has been leaked to the media that a fine is coming, and then the players are still in the dark. Like I think yesterday, someone was asking wicketkeeper, Rizwan about it. He's like, I don't know, the PCB might just reveal it. Really, this smacks so much of the kind of people who are in charge of this game, like and not just obviously this example from Pakistan is not the only one that we have the ICC president, Jai Shah, yesterday going to hand out the trophy and effectively celebrating with the Indian team. So when things are great, uh, they obviously want to be seen around the
They
team, and
also they
this
also
whole
went to
culture. Yeah,
Mandir together. I don't know if you saw that.
yeah, yeah,
Jay Shah,
yeah.
the Indian coach and the Indian captain, the three of them like are going. I feel really happy for Jay Shah. Um, because like kind of we've seen Succession as a great example of like the toll of being a nepo baby. And yesterday was the first time like he was so happy. He was like, कि उसके दोस्त की शादी or something. Like he was just like finally he'd managed to do the one job he's been trying to pull off forever. And the joy on his face was so radiant. It was just like you are a terrible, incompetent person, but you at least got one win, and at a human level, at least I could see how overjoyed he was. It was hilarious. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just wanted to add
No, no,
something to it as well. Okay,
yeah.
this month I was like on another podcast with someone from India, and I don't like they didn't mean to say this, but it ended coming out this way because they were like, "Hey, look, you have to understand, Jaysha has a mandate. 38% of the country voted for." And I was like, "Wait, Jaysha is in the ICC. His father is part of the government that X% of India voted for. But that conflation has been such a foregone conclusion. And Jay Shah, of all people, is absolutely, making no bones about trying to dispel any such notion.
Yeah, I mean, and you had like yesterday, you had Amit Shah, who's obviously the home minister and your father of Jesha in the stands, and then Jesha is there. All we had this like box where you had this sprinkling of IPL owners, BJP politicians who are like close to the BJP, the Hindutva faction, and then old cricketers who have now found and then a place in this system. And then obviously captains, World Cup winning captains like Dhoni and Rohit Sharma are there, just there sitting and just venerating this whole fascism. So like we were speaking about like New Zealand as enablers of fascism, and then we have like these Indian cricketers as well. This is a curious kind of situation where we find ourselves in, because I mean the cricket culture in India has changed quite dramatically since the IPL, right? Like we already they used to talk about this Bollywood politics nexus, but now this Bollywood politics nexus is symbolized, and it's like its lodestar is Hindutva. Like that's what like brings everyone together. We had this news report in the lead up to the final, where the team did not train because of the lunar eclipse, and this is this kind of anti-science belief that's held by some Hindus, that you should not venture out and engage in any kind of activity when the lunar eclipse is on. And the team has it has Christian cricketers, it has Muslim cricketers, but the core cultural fabric of the team is Hindutva. And then they swear by it. The coach will, and they will not even train during a lunar eclipse, because these are just the values that the team has now come to, embody. And like, it's just like this kind of, unease around this whole spectacle. Uh, I don't know, Emma, if you saw, the captain Surya Kumar Yadav, he posted his photo from like 10 years ago when he was at this petrol. His one of his friends was, opening up like a petrol pump, and he was there just to inaugurate it. And this is like, they come from these humble roots. But then around the same time, like in 10 years ago, he's also tweeting and praising Modi. This guy's like been a bigger Modi fan, before many Indian cricketers found him. How do you like see this whole Bollywood politics and like like the whole nexus playing out like in cricket?
Um, well, I think it's pretty unstoppable is one aspect of it. And I think we are seeing, like we've been talking about with the last year, Sharda has given a lot of like really memorable quotes around it. But in the fact that, the Indian cricket in particular, and maybe international cricket as well, but in Indian cricket in particular is really the BCCI is like responding to voter constituencies rather than the needs of the game. Um, I think that you see that happening all across Indian cricket. I think at the same time, particularly coming from Pakistan, um, I'm very much aware of like back in the 2000s when Inzamam got like became the captain, and there was like a lot of similar kind of critique. Faith was obviously important to a lot of those people as well, and like I'm hesitant about like maybe critiquing ways in which whatever a team chooses to prepare for something and whatever mindset that they need to be in. Um, but as obviously we know that this is part of like a much larger project as well. It would also be naive to kind of ignore that, and particularly that Surya Kumar has been as a cricketer has had a deeply unimpressive tournament. Um, which speaks to just how good this Indian team is. But Gautam Gambhir also is an all-star of just like he was hating on all of this way before it was cool. So you've got these like symbolically heavy guys in there. I think it's also helped that India's finally started winning tournaments as well. They've had such a long drought up until the World T20 that they managed to win. So you also had that final kind of coming together of those politics as well as like the success of the team that finally over the last kind of 12, 14, 24 months has like really come to the fore as well. um I think knowing from the experience of sports in general and of the Pakistani state's attempts as well, obviously the Indian state or the Indian Hindutva project aligning itself with Indian cricket is doing so with like this amazing, extremely rich and well resourced team. But I think in the long run, sports, the one of the good things about it is that as easy it is to be a vehicle for propaganda, it's also a really unreliable source of propaganda. And something or another causes an undoing, which is hard to control because emotions and passions, etc., are involved. Um, and I think that we already saw that, if the story is true, and may well not be, but like, when in the Asia Cup, when like the teams were, the Indian team was instructed not to shake hands, etc. I heard that privately Gautam Gambhir of all people complained that, what the hell is going on and why am I being attacked for being pro Pakistan? So I think that was a kind of insight into the limits of this as a propaganda, because obviously, there's only so much that a cricket win can achieve in terms of political aims, and it's quite easy for like those political forces to turn on them, or have some kind of reaction. Um, I also felt that in the coverage of the semi-final and final, and I watch very, very, very like I don't watch the IPL and I don't watch a lot of Indian cricket, so maybe this has already happened and I noticed it for the first time. But it was crazy that you had India playing a semi-final at the Wankhede, and you were barely showing Bollywood celebrities. Like they showed Ranbir and Alia in the second innings, and like I was just like, what? They're even in Indian jerseys. There's like the Bollywood royalty, like two dynasties marrying and their kid there. It was insane to me how few Bollywood stars were present at the Wankhede, and then and then at in Ahmedabad as well. You know, we kept showing Jay Shah. We kept showing. I don't know how many people even recognize Sanjog Gupta, but the ICC chief executive. But he was kind of. Priyan should know this, like especially at Desi weddings, 95% of the time you're making sure that everybody got a picture with the bride and groom, and so there's like family members whose main job is to make sure those pictures are happening. That was Joe Gupta's whole face was like, okay, and I'm gotta make sure that they get Jay on camera with Rohit and Dhoni, gotta make sure they get Jay on camera on this, and gotta make um so what I'm saying is that there is again like we really felt that just the symbolic power that maybe Bollywood used to have is not prioritized the same way, and you would imagine that something like that could end up happening with cricket as well, and how that plays out. I have no way of predicting also, but yeah, I think that you would see like a much more, it seems, like the intertwining is only going to increase.
Yeah, no, it seems like it. Like this Jesha thing is one thing. When you were speaking about Jesha earlier as well, is reminding me of. Remember when Trump went to McDonald's and he was the happiest one I've ever seen him. He was flipping burgers. Like that's Jesha. When he's around like all these cricketers, and just like he's just happy to be. That's his whole thing. Just make made to feel important, and then yeah, like you're saying, getting photographed with all these stars. It's just the culture of this game is quite yeah. It's beyond words at times. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you were going to say something? Yeah.
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, okay. We can cut that out.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
I know that Derek has a final question before we wrap
yeah.
up. So just yeah.
Yeah. So before wrapping up, I think we'd like to ask a little bit about the future of the sort of T20 format. And I say this as someone who has been cricket pilled of late, and very much likes this. Perhaps this is like the white North American sports fan in me that like quite likes that format and has seen that pretty digestible. And I very much enjoy it, and spending time watching the semifinals and finals. So it's already been replaced by franchise cricket as in the IPL and the premier format that we've seen. So like I guess my question is, what the hell is the point of a World Cup every 2 years? And what do you sort of view the future of the T20 format to be?
Uh, that's a really great question. Gets to the heart of like I think also what makes cricket a bit different so far, and I would imagine I don't know what the future holds. I think the first thing is obviously that the IPL is still, even now, it's still like 6 weeks or 2 months or something like that, right? So the for most cricket fans, um, it is part of the calendar, but like the majority of cricket that is still happening is in terms of international teams, etc. Um, and I think secondly, I I don't mean to be like being mean to you or anything, but like North Americans obviously they win their own league and that's world champions, so they're very unique that way.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the world, you like to have a World Cup before announcing someone as a world champion, and I think particularly I'm sure it's been discussed many times on this podcast as well, like particularly in like the post Second World War, decolonization and independence and all of those things. Like for so many countries, like the only way to kind of really feel like you've made it or you've made a mark or whatever is sporting achievements. And in cricket as well, when you look at all these Asian countries, well, I mean, at the heart of it, every cricket team other than England is playing cricket because it's a way of saying like "fuck you" to England. That's like the long-term history of the game. But particularly with Asian sides as well, there's so much subtext and political drama over there, and then obviously that for you take Pakistan out of the question, but even for Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, West Indies, they have maybe a few players in the IPL, but they don't really have a lot of representation there as well. So so there is a lot of relevance and importance for international cricket in those terms. The question really is that obviously with the oversized impact that India has is really, does India have a use for international cricket or not? And so far it does, because it is again like a really invaluable projection of Indian soft power and ideas of like their dominance, etc. So yeah, you have a lot of reasons for that to kind of continue, and I think in an ideal world, like when you look at like for example what football has, so you still have like a dominance of domestic leagues, but the World Cup again is such a novelty and it's such a huge draw because A, it's national sides, and then B, you do really get a chance to kind of see this your favorite players in kind of new situations. So I think I was just reading about this yesterday, like the World Baseball Classics popularity in North America, like I think finally there's an understanding of like what a really fun World Cup in a sport can be like. And I think that, all the politics, etc. aside, it's still like a really viable commercial and narrative kind of vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's definitely who's that sprinter who says it a world champion of what? Like there's
Noah
a
Noah
video.
Lyles,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Noah
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lyles.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's definitely get some of those vibes while following, the World Series or whatnot. But the World Baseball Classic is an interesting tournament. I mean, yeah, cricket will next for the next 2 3 months, like we'll be pretty much focused on like franchise cricket and like this many of the things that people are talking about, whether a team can score 300 runs and all this kind of uh, this it evokes this like the language of a space race, although it's nothing like that obviously. But where with the PSL and IPL happening, but there will be much to chat about. And I'm especially curious to and we can do this in a later conversation, think about this kind of the financialization of cricket, right? Like how the ownership of is basically when most of the leagues except Australia and Pakistan have like some kind of like Indian investment, right? So
Hmm.
uh, and how that's changing the character of T20 cricket in the future as well. But yeah, no, just wanted to thank you, Amber, for joining us. I see that we're close to a 30-minute mark, and really grateful to you for making a time to just review the World Cup. I'm sure as the T20 leagues pan out, we'll get on the chance to chat. So yeah, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, no, always a pleasure, man. This was a really fun conversation. And happy to be back again anytime.